Good afternoon. My name is Lisa Erdman. I'm a solutions engineer at Latera, and this is user training for Workshare Compare. I am going to be doing this demonstration style, um, and we're going to run through compare, compare for PowerPoint, compare for Excel, and selective compare. So I'd like to start in Outlook because that is where people work most. So when you receive any attachments, you'll notice that I have this Latera. I already have it set to Latera tab. So you have a compare and selective compare button. So when I have a single attachment and I click compare, it will automatically take that attachment, put it in as the modified, and then I can do the compare from there. You can do the same by opening, right-clicking, and using compare attachments, and it will do the same thing and make it modified. So, but the behavior is different depending on the number of attachments that you have. So in this case, I have 2 attachments. So if I just go to the Latera tab and click compare, now it put one in each place, the original and the modified. But let's just say I didn't want to do both. I can right click on the one that I want to compare, click compare attachments, and then I can browse to the original or and look for that. So then you can also have the email close. So if I just click on the 2 and I click compare, it will automatically launch. It knows how many attachments it has. So then we have this attachment with compare, PowerPoint, Excel files, and it's a combination. I can click on it, say I want to compare, and it will automatically prompt me with a dialog box that lists the attachments that are there. And I can choose which ones, that I want to compare. The same you can do by clicking Latera and compare, and again the dialog will come up. Or if you know which file, you can right click on the file and send to compare. But for this instance, we're going to use the dialog box. So you can compare your Excels, you can compare your PowerPoints, you can compare your Word, RTF, PDF files, but you can't compare a PowerPoint to a PDF. Oh, you'll notice that it is grayed out. So you can compare your Words, you can compare your Excels, but you can't select all and have all 3 programs run. It's just one set at a time. So for this instance, we're going to choose because we're going to go into compare. So let's talk about the screen. So you have your selection, select your original, select your modified. If you had a DMS, you'd also have an additional button for your DMS. You can swap. You can do a one-to-many if you click the plus button here and select another file, and we'll just select this arrangement letter. And so now you have, one, we'll end up with 2 tabs. It's a one-to-many, one to version 2, one to version 3, let's say. And now we have a rendering set. So you have your standard list of rendering sets. You choose the rendering set that you want. If you want to make an adjustment to colors, etc., you would click on this button on the side and it will edit the rendering set. And you can come in here and make any changes that you want. If you're looking to change colors, you click on Redline Rendering, and this is where you will find your color changes. For this demonstration, we're just going to use the standard out of the box. And then you have comparison mode. This generally you won't be touching. The program knows which mode it should run in, but I'm going to show you that because I have a PDF, I have fast, standard, text only, and compare without OCR. If you know it's OCR'd already, you can choose that. I tend to say that let the program do what it thinks it needs to do, and then let's click OK. So what's going to happen now is it's going to run the first comparison, which was the Word to PDF, and then it's going to run the second one, and I will end up with 2 tabs. So now I have the 2 comparisons that I run. Let's just jump back to the selection dialog so you can see you have option to get it right back from there. What I want to show you is the behavior when you click to select the first file and we'll just browse to Word, and we'll select Sample Original. Notice that it automatically prompted, and here it's prompting you to say select the modified document. So I will select the modified, and I can run that comparison as well. So now I have 3 tabs with my files that I've launched in different methodologies, and I can now review my documents or work within, what I need to do. So let's take a look at the selection screen here. So you have your browsing, you have your swap, and then you have your compare button. Compare, you can run a compare, you can run a compare in a new window. So I wanted to show you what makes the workflow a little bit easy. So let's look here. It says today's date, March 26th. Let's just say that's not a change. I wanted to make a different change. So I'm going to open the modified document, and here you see March 26th. We're just going to change it. This is the date that I want, and I'm going to click Save, but I may have other changes, so I'm just going to leave it open, and I'm going to minimize it. And now I have the option, do I want to rerun it into this window or select another? For this demo, we're just going to click on it and rerun it in the same window, and now you can see this is the date that I want. So you have, an easy methodology for possible changes that still needed to be made as you were reviewing. And you can just keep going. Here I have brackets that were deleted, and I need those brackets in the file, so I can come back over, and let's see where that had to be after issue of. So issue of, we're going to come in here, we're going to put in the square brackets, click Save again, come back, and rerun the compare. And now it's not deleted anymore. So you have a workflow that saves clicks basically and saves time for you to work with your files. So then you have Save As, Comparison Document, Word document with track changes, emailing, attach as a PDF, attach as a PDF with change pages as a track change, and more email options. So more email options allows you to send in multiple methodologies. In this case, I had original selected, modified selected, and the red line. I could choose that I only want to send the modified document. I want to send the red line, and I want to send the track change. But there's 3 files. I also want it to be zipped. So I can just click and do that, or let's just say I want to change the name. I can come in here. This is the new name. I want this to be red line, and this one to be track change. So I can click OK now. It will build that, and it will launch it into an attachment to an Outlook email as a zip file. So we'll just give that a moment, and now here's my zip file. I'm going to open it up, and here you can see red line, this is my new name, and track changes. So it builds all 3 files for you, and you can move along with the next step. So additionally, we went over this individual, but we also have multiples. So now you can see that you have the 3 different files. Again, you can change the name here. File 1, file 2, file 3. You can choose what you want it to be. We're going to do a text file for this one, a DOC for this one, and a DOCX. So you can just, I have to, there we go. Oops. Text, select the files, and now you have, okay, this is grayed out. If I had one as a PDF, then this would become enabled, and then you can include just the change pages. You would click OK, and again, it would build it into an email. So the next thing is printing that self-explanatory PDFs. So this PDF button is, so you can do is save as PDF if there's, no real security things or anything that you really want to do with it. But here we have PDF, PDFA, and you can configure security. You can set security, prevent certain things. You can specify a password. And then you also can come in and you can specify your pages. One thing I want to point out is metadata cleaning. Yes, that's grayed out. That's by default. That's only if you have protect. If you're compare only, this will remain grayed out. Select pages to include. You can put in your pages. You can view and send. So you can decide, well, what do you want to do? Do you want to open it? Once the PDF, you want to email it, or none of the above, you just want to save it. Up to you. And then we have Word, so you can open it in Word or open it in Word as a track change document. It completely converts all of the changes that you see on the screen, and it will make it into track changes. And then here are your search features: first, last, previous, next. This is the same rendering sets that we talked about on the selection dialog box, and the same you can edit from here as well. If you decide you actually didn't want to have this rendering, you wanted, let's say, no color, you can on the fly switch between your rendering so that it looks different, or it's a different one that you wanted for a different client. And then you have layout. So the nice thing about layout is if you don't need to see your original, your modified, or both, you can have more real estate by just clicking on comparison only, and it is a sticky, so when you exit you come back, it will be at comparison only. You can always switch it right back right from there. And then you have this gray area, and this is a toggle, and it's just to show in a clearer manner, or the comments that you have put into the document. It's just easier to read this way. Next we have category view, list view. List view is just the listing of all of the changes in the document. You can browse one by one, you can click next and move through them the same way. This is the change number, the page number, followed by its position on the page. So, and it's line, etc. Sorry. Status view, I'm going to show you in a moment. And now let's look at category view. So category view, you have all these different categories of changes. I'm going to click over to this one because it has more categories available. There's about 16 different categories, and you can see these are all the numbering changes. And you have matching changes, and I like this one, matching changes, suggested changes. So if you have a matching change, you went through the document, replaced quality with Acme 4 times in the document. It's making a suggestion. It's saying, yeah, you did it throughout the document, but there's one still remaining in the document. So it's letting you know you missed one. And then you have all the different categories, and then you have uncategorized. Uncategorized just means it's the textual changes within the document. So you can browse through those. And what's nice is you can build a new document. So let's just go in and select this. So if we look at capitalization changes, if I tick it, it selects everything underneath. Let's just say I didn't want that one. That's a rejection, is unchecking it. And now you can see that the box is actually blue now. But we're going to go in and we're going to select everything here. So we're going to go through all the different pieces and say, yes, I want all those changes to happen, but I don't want that date change to happen. So we can build a new document. You've done your review, you're at that point, and you want a new version. So you've gone in, you've accepted your changes, and you click Apply Accepted Changes, and now we have the applied, and we have what we've rejected as well. So now you'll see here that now the date is in what it was in the original, and it's been rejected, and my comments remain in the document as expected. So now what else can you do here? So if you're working internally or you're working with someone who has Workshare Compare, you can actually collaborate. So let's just say all these changes are accepted, but I've had questions on this piece. So the arrangement notice, actually, let's just use one that's, I'm going to flag it. So notice it turns off the check, puts a flag, and now when I look at status view, I can see, let's go back, let's unaccept one. Let's untick that one again so you have a full. So now you can see everything that I've accepted. I have not accepted the date, and then I have one piece flagged. So if I am working with someone and I want them to review this, I need a suggestion. Is the wording on that paragraph correct? I can save this, send it to that person to collaborate with without them having to browse and select the document. So let me show you that. We're going to do a file, save as, and you can use the save as on the ribbon also, comparison, and I'm going to switch it over to the Workshare Delta file, and I'm going to call this user training. So now it's saved that file for purposes of showing you. I'm just going to close. So when you X out, it says do you want to save. When you have multiples, you can tick this box and say no, I don't want to save anything, and it closes them all for you in one shot. So now we're going to go back to user training, and I created this WDF. I'm just going to double click on it. So now I sent it to someone who I'm working with internally, or I know that has Workshare Compare, and what you'll notice is that it automatically launched the comparison with the files. Everything's compared, and you'll notice that the box is still blue. They can come over to status view and they can see what you flagged that you want them to take a look at. They can click on it and read that paragraph and say, oh, and make suggested changes. So then you can collaborate in that manner without having to go through all the steps of recomparing over and over again. So that is it for compare. We're going to move to compare for PowerPoint. So I have, this time we're going to select the two files. And compare with Workshare. And you'll notice that my modified document is on top and you can swap. I want to show you something. I'm going to exit out. And I selected original first. If you select your modified first and then the original and right click, compare, they will now be in the right order. So when you are selecting files and from the file system and you want them to come in order, as long as you always select your modified document first and then you select your original, it will put them in the correct order. But even if you don't do that, you can always swap. So I have my original, I have my modified. The browsing works exactly the same way. You select your original, you will automatically get prompted for the modified, and then you can select the modified. You can swap from here. There are only two rendering sets. We're going to choose detect all changes, and we have the rendering set button just like we did in the other. So if you need to make any changes, you can do that there, and we're going to click compare. So compare for PowerPoint is actually not as many things as we went over with compare, but still a very strong product all on its own. So what you'll notice here is the first thing is you see these icons. So you have an exclamation point. That means that there's been a change. Equal means that the slides are the same. You can decide, do I want to see just the changes? So now you'll notice that the equal slide is gone. So you can this is a small deck. If you have a large deck and you have a bunch of unchanged slides in between, it makes it easier to browse through and look at them. And then you can see that there's a list of all the different slides that have changed. You can also click here for current slide only and only see the changes that apply to that slide. We're going to go through the ribbon here. So selecting documents is exactly the same as it was in Compare. All the buttons are pretty much the same. If you wanted to start a new one, this is the same selection dialog box. Save as, it allows you to save it as a PDF. I have it defaulted by PDF. You could have it with the PowerPoint comparison, but when you send as a PowerPoint comparison, just remember that if the person does not have the application, they won't be able to open it. So if you're unsure, send it as a PDF. And then we have print and we have create. These two buttons do the same, make the same reports, but printing, of course, you're going to print. Create is when you're just going to save a particular report type. So here we have full comparison, change summary, or slide view. As I click on each, you can see in the icon that it changes and it shows you what you're going to end up with. This is the slides and the changes, changes only, or just the slides only. You can decide if you want to include or not include the change slides, and then you can preview it and click create. And you have, what you were looking for. So we went through the show changes and slide. You can search as you did before. Again, you have your rendering sets, and you can edit your rendering sets from here. So that is it for this application. I'm sure here. So the icons change depending on what it was. The content change, you have the double arrows. This slide was moved, you see it has the slide down. This slide moves source and it's pointing up. So you have different icons representing the different changes. But other than that, I am going to move on to Compare for Excel. So we will launch. This time we'll do it from here. So I'm going to launch Compare for Excel. And now you'll see I have the files that I've previously opened into Excel, and they're available for me to use for comparison, or I can go in and select. I'm going to select, and we're going to jump over to the Excel folder. I'm going to select the original, automatically prompts me, and for the modified, and I'm going to select the modified. I can compare everything or select a worksheet that I want to work with. In this case, we're going to use the summary. You can detect all changes or just value changes. I'll leave it on all changes. You have the ability to, again, edit the rendering set and the way that it looks if you like. You just click the edit button, and I'm going to click compare. So the nice thing about this is that it looks and feels just like Excel. But the difference is that you're going to see some of these different color changes. Well, what do they mean? Let's click on the legend. On the legend, you have the values and the formulas. So an insertion and deletion, so you can see regular insertions and deletions. And then you have cells and overlaid objects. So an insertion, so here we have an inserted row. Had it been a deleted row, then it would show, but just with the red. Then you have direct and indirect changes. A direct change means that you went into a cell and affected it in some way, whether it's a value change, a formatting change, and an indirect change means that that direct change caused a change in this other cell. So let me show you what I mean. So on this first cell, I click on it and it automatically pops open and tells me the number format changed from general to text. If I click on this one, we have a direct change. It means that I went into this cell and added the word purchases. Then you have one here. There's an indirect change, a direct change, and a number format change. So the number format changed from general to number. I did a direct change where I changed the formula. And when I change the formula, that has an indirect change on the resulting number. So now the number has a change. So, but the change also, the numbers are also affected by the change to adding this row. So you have a number of things going on all at once. So green, it's indirect and indirect, another indirect, indirect. So you have a lot going on in this file, and it tells you on each one, every cell. So if you want to run a new one, you can click on this button. It'll launch, another instance, and you would be able to compare. You can swap, and here is where you can see the deletions instead, and then but we're going to go back to what it was. Export, we're going to come back to. That's the save functionality, and then you have the ability to email. You can choose your original, modified. You can change the name here as well by just selecting, and you can decide what you wanted to see, the change type filters, the indirect highlights, or even the source formatting. And speaking of source formatting, that is the next button I'm going to show you. So people get creative in Excel, and they color and they have different fonts, etc. But it can make it very noisy when you're trying to read. So I'm going to show you what the file actually looks like, and it makes it difficult to read the different pieces. So I'm going to turn that back off so we can easily read and see the changes that are important to us. Then you have show direct changes only. That's only if you want to see what was a direct change into the file and nothing that was indirectly changed. What edits did we make to the file? You can filter through the changes. In this case, let's say we don't want to see the text changes. You'll notice that equipment purchases, that is no longer highlighted in the gold color. So you can do that for any of these filters there. And again, you have your rendering sets, you can edit it, and you always have your legend to come back to help you understand what's going on in the file. And then you have your navigation tools. So with that, we're going to jump back to export. So export is basically saving. So you can save an entire workbook or a selected sheet if you had, but we happen to have only selected just the one sheet. You can have all your change types. I don't want to see the source formatting. I want something that's clean. And then you can choose whether or not you want to open it after it's saved. And in this case, yes, I do. I'm going to click export, and it's going to ask me to save, and we're going to call this user training. And it automatically opens the file, and now I can see all the different changes, and I can review it again, and I can share it. So while we're in Excel, we don't have the panels coming open. So how do you work with the document knowing, well, what has changed? We know that this is a direct change, it's in gold, but it doesn't say anymore what it was. So that's where the change report comes in. So you'll notice I was clicking on this cell, and now you can see that view is highlighted. If I click on this cell and I come back, well, it usually switches. Okay, well, nonetheless, so you have the Acme, and now you want to go and you want to view what's going on. Let's just say it's this one. You have your two numbers, you're not sure what that is. So you can come into your list and decide, well, what is the number that you want to see? So equipment purchases. This is 1811. So we know we have that 1811. Well, I want to see what that change is. I click view, and it brings me, and there's multiple 1811s, but as you can see, it brings you directly to the cell, and you can find out what's going on. So that's the next change, and each one will take you to where it is. So here's the other 1811, and there you go. So, but what's happening with Acme bonds? So that was the first change in the document. The number format for the cell had been changed, and we can make sure by clicking on that. So you're able to review the reports and how you're working and going through the document. This is a true rendering, not meant to replace. If you'll look as I type in, well, click in, that it's all direct formatting. This is not replacing the original or the modified. This is something that's just a report. Okay, so that is the end of the user training. Thank you for attending. If you need any documentation or additional information, you can go to the Customer Support Center and you can download the user guide. There's also a QRC that is available, and you can email to request that. Thank you. Have a good day.